Hi, everybody, and welcome. I'm so glad that you have decided to join us today. For some of you, I think it might be good morning, and others good afternoon, and others good evening, depending on where in the world you might be joining us from. My name is Gwen Gringheis, and I am the Assistant Registrar of Recruitment and International at the University of Toronto, John H. Daniels Faculty of Architecture, Landscape and Design. So I will be passing it over very soon to Professor Elise Shelley to talk more about the MLA program, so the Master of Landscape Architecture program. But I did want to just briefly walk you through some housekeeping details. So we will start with a formal presentation, after which we will open it up for all of the questions that you have, and we are happy to answer those questions. If during the presentation you do have some questions that pop into your head, you can use the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen to enter your questions there. Once the presentation has finished, we will go through all of your questions one by one. So without further ado, I would like to pass it over to Professor Elise Shelley. I think you're muted, Elise.
Okay, now I'm unmuted and have continued to share, hopefully. Sorry about that. Thank you so much for attending. Welcome. I'm very excited to share with you more information about our Master of Landscape Architecture program. But I will just start with a little bit of information about myself. So I am a practicing landscape architect. I've been practicing in Canada for over 20 years. I was originally licensed and did my professional education in the US at University of Virginia. I've been also teaching at the University of Toronto for over 20 years and have been the director of the Master of Landscape Architecture program for the last 4 years. So I have a lot of knowledge about our program, a lot of knowledge about our discipline, and would love to speak with you individually if you have questions. And I look forward to being able to share more with you. I will also just say that, as many of you might know, landscape architecture is not necessarily a profession that's widely known, and certainly not when students are leaving high school necessarily. And so it's something that, may be new to many of you as something to consider. I actually followed the route that many of you may be on, which is I started off my undergraduate education in architecture, went on to get my master's of architecture because that's just what you did. That was the expected path, and discovered landscape architecture along the way, and find that the potential with landscape architecture to deal with real world issues like climate crisis, as well as to think about things like social justice and truth and reconciliation, all while creating spaces that are dynamic and change through the seasons and through the daytime and through the years, to me is just a fascinating field to work in. So I'm really excited to share it with you, and to really talk about how we think about landscape architecture here at the Daniels faculty. So now the question is, can I advance my slides? There we go. So one of the things that is absolutely unique about our program is the fact that we are part of a faculty that has many different programs that are really unique in terms of the design profession. So we're part of a faculty, the Daniels faculty, that has architecture, landscape architecture, urban design, but also has forestry and visual studies. So these are very exciting allies to have in the conversations that we look at in our curriculum and in our profession. So our curriculum is really looking at the future of landscape practice, how we're thinking about the next generation operating in our discipline. How do we create socially inclusive, culturally meaningful, and ecologically informed, sustainable, and climate responsible environments? And we're doing this in a relatively new building that was really built as an amazing example and demonstration of architecture and landscape at the forefront of our discipline. So our program is very much linked to, the discipline as a whole is very much linked to humanities, environmental and social sciences, and engineering. And we certainly kind of also work to ensure that we have those connections within our curriculum and within our teaching. We are part of the University of Toronto, which is a unique and world-renowned arena for education, research, and public engagement. And we really end up with students and graduates of our program who work all over the world, are internationally recognized, and absolutely pursue student excellence. So, just in case you don't necessarily know about how landscape architecture kind of works in Canada and North America, I want to talk first about the fact that we are a professional program. So this is a critical component to the slide that I'll mention to you next. We're a master's program, which is a critical component for becoming a licensed landscape architect. Um, we pride ourselves in the fact that our Master of Landscape Architecture students come from many, many different backgrounds. Many students join our program with non-design education backgrounds. We also encourage students who do have prior knowledge of planning or urban design or environmental design or architecture, because again, we find that those students also are able to greatly contribute to the conversation of how our discipline works using dynamic materials. So, while I've already, mentioned our incredible focus on, social inclusivity, cultural meaning, ecological, sustainable, and climate responsible thinking, it's also just important to know, again, that we are really thinking about how all of the programs within our faculty are working together to challenge design interests in a wide range of geographies, scales, and sociocultural contexts. And that's one of the reasons why we find it so important that we have students that join us from all over the world and from all types of different academic backgrounds. So it is important to know that in order to become a licensed landscape architect in North America, you have to have an accredited degree. So in Canada, we are accredited by the Landscape Architecture Accreditation Board of Canada, which is closely allied with the Landscape Architecture Accreditation Board in the United States, and they share accreditation standards. So once you have a degree from a master's, a professional degree from an accredited school, you then are able to be employed. And during that employment, you are logging your hours as part of a professional development program within whatever province or state you happen to be working in. And then you start to pursue the landscape architecture registration exams. And this is an internationally recognized examination that governs our professional practice, both in Canada and the US. And there is some reciprocity internationally as well. So, graduating from an accredited school plus a professional development program and the landscape architecture registration exams are what you need to become licensed in landscape architecture. And as I've mentioned, we share reciprocity with other provinces as well as the US. So the accreditation that we just received, we have our new 5-year accreditation term just renewed last year. The professional degree that you would get from the Daniels faculty, the Master of Landscape Architecture, would be recognized in this process throughout North America and beyond. So we have several programs that we house in our Master of Landscape Architecture um, faculty. And the first, which is the majority of students that we accept every year, will be joining our professional accredited 3-year program. It's for students that are new to the discipline or with a bachelor's degree with a final year average of at least mid-B from a recognized university. And this includes students from our own faculty. They would also be coming, our Honors Bachelor of Architectural Studies students would be coming to our 3-year program as well, because of the fact that the undergraduate degree is not a professional degree. The advanced standing program that we have is a program where you would essentially miss you would skip over your first year, and there's some flexibility in this in terms of case by case studies, but this is often a situation where we need students who are accepted into the 2-year program to have, local coursework on planting design, information about the theory of and history of landscape architecture in a very broad sense. You would need to have extensive understanding of grading and earthwork and visual representation tools. So, for the most part, we have found that the students who are accepted into our 2-year advanced standing program are students who have probably already taken a foundation first year at a different MLA program in Canada. So, in many cases, though you may have had prior work that may seem directly applicable, we have to ensure that the degree that you would receive in 2 years still addresses all of the accreditation requirements. So this is actually a safeguard for you to make sure that your degree is recognized throughout North America, as I mentioned, with all of the accreditation standards in place. So you are absolutely welcome to apply to our advanced standing program if you feel like you have direct applicable knowledge that would cover the topics on the screen. However, we will look at it in a case-by-case basis, and I would greatly encourage you to click the box in the application that allows you to be considered for the 3-year program as well, because we have very, very few students who are actually eligible for our advanced standing. In fact, we didn't accept any last year into our advanced standing route. So um, just to give you that information. Now, we also have a post-professional degree, which is a 1-year degree for interested candidates who already have a BLA or an MLA from another program, but want to take a year to do additional research, to pursue other kinds of study that you would be able to do in that post-professional program. So, logistics out of the way, just to talk about how great our program is and how wonderful the relationships that are forged within this faculty are. So, as I mentioned, we have a relatively new building that has an incredible kind of studio space that encourages collaborative efforts. We have an extensive materials and woodshop fabrication lab where we have robotic machines as well as CNC routers and a variety of equipment that is changing all of the time as the profession moves in new directions. We have amazing library resources. The greatest resource, of course, being our librarian, who can put you in touch with all kinds of digital databases as well as our physical archives. We've got active research and investigation happening on the roof of our building with the Green Roof Innovation Testing Laboratory, where we are working with industry partners to really think about how we can begin to change how things are happening in our discipline and in our industry. And this is a website that you can go to look at this in greater detail to understand more of it. This is a great opportunity over the summer for potential employment working in our very own Grit Lab. We also have some amazing initiatives that have developed over the last few years, like the NDG um, project, which is a summer endeavor that works where students are able to partner with Indigenous youth to really help them understand how landscape architecture could be a path forward in their educational journey. Oops. We have an incredible public programming schedule, which again, we can take advantage of the fact that we have architecture, urban design, visual studies, forestry, and we have people coming from all over the world to speak in our public programming schedule. And so it becomes an incredible opportunity to expose yourself to even more amazing experts in our field. And again, we've got a great space in which to do so. One of the things that's so exciting about the multidisciplinary aspect of our faculty are the opportunities for collaborative work. And that happens not only within our own MLA cohort, but certainly within the larger group as well. So, just to talk about our curriculum. So, we essentially have five curricular streams that are addressed through our coursework, through opportunities that we have outside coursework, through our public programming, through events that take place, a lot of different ways that we begin to engage through these different curricular streams: design, visual communications, computer applications, history theory, environment, technology, and planning, and professional practice. So this essentially outlines our curriculum, and I'll go into this in greater detail. The first year, of course, is the foundation year. And I think it's important to say at this point that there also is another element to this that actually begins before year one. If you are an applicant who joins our program without any design background or any familiarity with some of the computer software or even the kind of theoretical framework we might be working in, we do have something called the Daniels Workshop, which is a 2-week session that's held in the beginning of August, free of charge, for students who are coming into our programs who need that little bit of leg up and information prior to joining. And then you will join in one of the last weeks of August into a week-long field course that actually takes place prior to the beginning of the term. And that becomes a week where you are with the rest of the students in your cohort. It's an introduction to your classmates, an introduction to Daniels, an introduction to the discipline, an introduction to Toronto, and possibly even an introduction to Canada for many of you. And it's a really exciting week where we spend the entire time in the field, drawing and learning about how to look at the city around us with a landscape lens. And this leads right into what you'll be doing for the rest of the year, where you're going to be taking design studios on landscape fundamentals, courses on visual communication, history theory and criticism, site engineering, plants and design. And then we have a field course at the end of the year as well, after courses are done, where we return to the field and we again look at all that we've learned in a different season. This then takes you into year two, where we'll be looking at um, a great opportunity for collaboration where the third semester studio is actually something where architects, landscape architects, and urban design students come together and are actually working on a joint project. And it becomes an amazing opportunity for landscape architects really to show their expertise as unique in these collaborative efforts. You'll also be taking more classes on history and theory, but now with a more contemporary focus, looking at materials, assemblies, and technologies, larger scale issues of landscape ecology, landscape hydrology, and visual communications, as well as a comprehensive building studio. Your final year is really one that becomes much more self-driven. You'll be taking a course called Research Methods that helps you really prepare for your thesis term in your final semester. You'll be taking an advanced site technologies course, an advanced visual communications course, and you'll also be able to select a studio from options offered in architecture, urban design, or landscape. These are often the opportunities you may have to travel. And there are great opportunities to again begin to pursue your own personal interests through these design studios. And then your final semester is when you're doing your thesis and taking a professional practice course, which gives you all kinds of opportunities to network and to learn about the many, many different paths that you have in our field. So important to note that electives are available to you in term 4 and term 6. These can be taken in any program in the Daniels faculty as well as further out in the university. There's opportunities to do collaborative specializations with the School of the Environment. We're also pursuing a variety of collaborative efforts with forestry and other programs within our faculty as well. The other thing that I will mention are opportunities in the summer. We do not offer courses in the summer through the MLA program. However, forestry does, and many of our landscape students participate in several of the forestry courses. And there are also programs in the summer that are design build courses, as well as our global opportunities where students might choose to take a travel studio for credit. So we can get into more of these as we move forward. So from the very beginning, when we first start in our field course, we are all beginning to talk about how the world around us and the things that we see are all subject to larger systems at work, be they issues of climate change, issues of social justice, questions about reconciliation, equity, diversity, inclusion. And these are at the forefront of our conversations throughout the entire time in the program. In that first year, I mentioned some of the various courses that you're taking, and I will say that for the most part, in the first year, we're looking at sites that are within the urban context of Toronto. We are looking at how the seminar courses you're taking are continually reinforcing the questions and conversations that are had in studio. And we're really pursuing all of these again in a very considered and kind of choreographed way. So all of the conversations are contributing to the larger questions that we're asking and studying in our coursework. I mentioned previously that one of the things that we start from the very beginning in the field course is how everyone is coming to our program with expertise from other places and how that then contributes to the coursework you're taking, be it in visual communications, site engineering, history, theory, and criticism, planting design. All of these courses are working to supplement the knowledge you bring with you and the work that we're doing in studio. So this is an example of one of the first year studios, landscape and culture, where we're really looking at a variety of different methods and ways to analyze and explore different projects and to think about how all of the things that you're learning about planting design and topography and stormwater management come together in a culturally meaningful way. And in many ways, just to go back very quickly, like one of the things about this studio, it's within the framework of landscape and culture, and it's really looking at this question of how do we design for cultures that are not our own? And that I think is a question that we need to be asking ourselves all throughout our careers. The other thing that you'll be doing all throughout your careers is collaborating. So that's where this integrated landscape urbanism studio becomes so very important because you're working with colleagues in the architecture department, in the urban design department, as well as your peers in your landscape architecture cohort. And this becomes an incredibly important thing because this is something that will continue as you move forward in the profession. And meanwhile, you're also studying materials, you're looking at contemporary theory, you're learning about ecology, you're learning about hydrology, more advanced visual communication. And again, this comes together in the comprehensive building studio in your final term of the second year. And so these projects really do begin to look at a larger scale. And again, this is where landscape architecture is so powerful because we are working on sites, yes, that have finite boundaries, but we're working with materials that are part of regional and global systems. We are impacting what can happen at a much larger scale than the sites that we're working on ourselves. And this is the amazing power of landscape architects is we actually can make a meaningful difference in the larger questions of climate resilience because we're working with these systems as our medium. This is an example of a design, some of the work that's done in the field in the summer opportunities, design build scenarios where there's opportunities, throughout Canada as well as in our kind of local context. Here's a great example of one of our electives that's talking about collective commons and urban mapping and how the act of mapping and the act of kind of planning implications begins to impact landscape architecture. And again, a variety of opportunities will exist throughout the entire time that you are with us to be part of research, whether it's again hands-on research happening through the Grit Lab, whether it's working with the Center for Landscape Research, which is looking at a whole variety of projects, whether it's working with individual faculty members and their research endeavors. There's a lot of different ways that you are exposed to research throughout your time here, ultimately culminating in your research methods course for your final year. The thesis that we operate at Daniels for the Master of Landscape Architecture program is an independent endeavor where you will be working in your first semester of your final year in understanding how a methodology for research and understanding how visual communications can feed that. So the advanced visual communications and the research methods course are actually taught hand in hand so that you are learning ways to communicate the vast quantities of research that you're doing for your thesis project. You're also taking a course on site technologies, and this is another opportunity for that cross-disciplinary connection with our design research studio options. So, for example, this year for our option studios, the landscape offerings were taught by practitioners. James Roche from De Hillier here in Toronto. They actually did a project in Fort McMurray, Alberta, and traveled there as part of Reading Week. We also had a studio that was taught by Brackish out of Halifax and St. John, Matthew Brown, and their students traveled to Halifax and St. John during Reading Week. We had another group that actually was through the urban design offering that went to Lima, Peru. We had another option group through the architecture department that actually went to Zanzibar. And then there was another group, again, because these are option studios and the travel is optional, we had another group that was looking here in Little Jamaica and looking at Toronto-based projects. So there's a lot of great opportunities with those design research studios, and I always encourage students to really look at the coursework and the options that will actually feed their thesis interests, because that is really what the final year is all about. So that last semester is really focused on those independent projects where you're working with an independent studio advisor. So these are some of the option studio works that you might see in the kind of final review jury setting and the kind of way that you will learn to really begin to visualize incredible um, research and then design efforts in your work. Here we have a series of thesis projects. This particular project was looking at Hamilton Harbor and understanding how stormwater management could actually be further enhanced through kind of a comprehensive park strategy and public space strategy. Here's a project that was looking at New York and looking at the kind of waterfront interface and how we could begin to think about public space above ground and kind of environmentally rich functional space below in the water interface. Project in Hong Kong, again, that was looking at kind of some amazing conversations around recycling and reuse, again, at that waterfront condition. Projects here in Canada that were looking at mining sites and how we could begin to not only think about mine reclamation as something that has a very scientific role, but certainly something that can also talk about memory and culture and the meaning of the land. So one of the last things that I'll talk about in terms of the curriculum has to do with the professional practice stream. And one of the great opportunities that we have here is an incredible wealth of alumni that are not only local and here and able to visit our class contexts, but very excited to talk to graduating students, to be able to share with them all of the opportunities that are in store for them in the future. So not only do we have an entire class in your final term where you are meeting all types of graduates and learning about their pathways and their many different routes of study, be it in, international employment, public sector, private sector, working for regional conservation authorities, pursuing arboriculture, all of the many opportunities that are possible. But we also have a large event that's again, a kind of interdisciplinary event where we invite, 40 to 50 firms to come and be available for student networking. So it's a great opportunity that happens every winter. So we're really looking at a way of operating that encourages collaboration, encourages cross-disciplinary discussions, but also really celebrates the amazing, unique opportunities that a degree in landscape architecture can provide. And that's just where I want to end, is kind of what sets us apart. So we have internationally recognized student design excellence. One of our graduates last year won the very top ASLA design prize with her thesis, coming from Canada. So I think that's definitely a testament to that level of work. We have an incredible faculty here that has world-renowned experience. Um, we lecture internationally. We're part of symposiums all over the world. We have an exceptional set of facilities, both in terms of education and research. And our curriculum is continually being um, reconsidered and revamped, not just for the sake of it, but certainly in pursuit of accreditation standards, but also to influence what those accreditation standards should be. So, our faculty, probably in the last 10 years, has really been pushing the conversation about how Indigenous placemaking should be involved in our curriculum. And this has been something that has greatly influenced the larger Canadian landscape architecture realm. Our conversations about equity and diversity inclusion are alive and well here in Canada, and certainly something that we're talking about not only within our curriculum, but we have a very broad range of public programs, or both public programs, but also Daniels wide programs. For example, we have a group called Community for Belonging, where we're continually meeting and talking about relevant issues and how we make sure that those are reflected in our educational efforts. Now, we have a very small cohort that you would potentially be joining. We usually have about 25 to 30 students in every one of our MLA years. So the entire program is about maybe, somewhere in the 70 to 90 students. And then in each year, we have between 25 and 30. So it's you get to know your fellow MLA students very well, and it's an incredibly supportive learning environment. Again, the diversity of the programs that we have under our faculty really allow for great opportunities for integration and collaboration. And you're in Toronto, which is a global hub for design. So not only do we have amazing access to practitioners and experts in our field through our own um, programming endeavors, there's all kinds of things happening in the community as well. And the University of Toronto is known for its amazing research initiatives on the environment, cities, health, society, and culture. And this is absolutely perpetuated through our program. And I will say that we have incredible employability with our graduates. Everyone goes on to work in all kinds of realms, again, all over the world. And one of the things that I'll just say is, while we do not have a co-op program or something where we are necessarily lining you up with employers, we do have a vast number of firms that reach out to us every year for various internship programs, summer employment opportunities, all types of questions about recommendations for students. And these all get immediately sent out to the MLA cohorts so that you can be applying for these incredible international initiatives every year. So I think it's a great place to be. As I mentioned, I came here through the path of architecture, and then just discovered the absolute magic of landscape architecture and the incredible impact it can have. I'm happy to speak with anybody individually who has questions about the program or about whether it's the right fit for you. My email is here down at the bottom of the screen. Certainly, if you have questions about admissions, you can also contact graduate@daniels.utoronto.ca. I'm also, of course, happy to take questions now, but I do just want to invite you to contact me directly if, in fact, you would like to um, not necessarily speak up at the moment, but certainly please reach out with a question right now if you have one. And now I'm going to stop sharing and bring it back to the next part of our session.
Thank you so much, Elise. So as I mentioned earlier, please put your questions in the Q&A and we will answer them for you. I know there was some questions submitted in advance as well, so perhaps we can talk about some of those ones. So one of the questions that we did receive in advance was whether or not field trips, local and international, are incorporated into the curriculum of the program.
So we have a wide variety of field trips. So certainly courses like plants and design, or the field courses that I mentioned in your first year, or your site technologies course, or your landscape ecology course. There are a wealth of field trips that are included as part of your standard curriculum. So, we would be arranging for buses for some of those trips. Some of it you would be accessing via transit. All of that would be set up in the course syllabus for those types of trips. And that is something that you would participate in every semester, every year of your program. In terms of international field trips, those would typically take place as optional because it would be a student-borne cost. That being said, we actually do have some amazing funding resources that you would have access to, both at the university level as well as Daniels itself. So, for example, the courses that I mentioned for the option studios and for thesis travel that you may want to do, this would be something where you would pursue funding through the various resources that you would have access to. And those options would be, if it's part of the fifth term option studios, that would be a scenario where there would be a travel plan that would be set up by your professor. There would be things that are facilitated by the fact that you're going with a studio. It really is an amazing opportunity because you would have access to see things in that context you likely would not do as a tourist. I don't know how many people go to Fort McMurray on a general basis, but again, it was an absolutely amazing trip for the students to be able to meet with the various people in that town to understand some of the issues going on for them. So there are built-in options for travel, both domestically, locally, and internationally. And again, whether those are required or option is going to completely depend on the context of the course itself.
Thank you. So this is an application or admissions type question, so I guess we'll try to answer it, but if we can't, I would encourage this person to send their question to the graduate at Daniels at your Toronto email. But the question is the application process different for somebody who might be applying from the United States?
I think the main thing is that it's an international application, so I believe you're just in a different category. But the actual process of how we would evaluate you is no different. We would be looking at your undergraduate degree. That would be vetted in terms of its applicability by the admissions group. So if there's a question there, that's something that you could certainly reach out to the graduate admissions group about. We're looking at your statement of interest. We're looking at your reference letters. We're looking at your portfolio. And that's something that I will speak about because this is probably a question that students have no matter where they're applying. What should the portfolio look like? What should it look like if you're coming from an undergraduate program in architecture versus what should it look like if you're coming from an undergraduate program that has no design relations? And I think the main thing we want to see in a portfolio, and I would say that having a design background does not always help. The main thing we want to understand is how are you seeing the world around you in terms of landscape principles or landscape ideas? And how are you interested in seeing the world around you in a different way? So that could be photography and a description of how you are seeing, what you are showing us in terms of its role, its position, its potential, its condition. You could be showing us hand sketches of things that you have drawn. You could show us, work from furniture that you've built or a garden that you've planted, or you could be showing us information that you maybe have done in an architectural context, but needing to show it with a landscape first kind of conversation so that it's as important to put kind of captions and text in your portfolio as it is to put images, because we are looking at that portfolio not just to see pretty pictures, but to understand how those visualizations are communicating your ideas and interest in landscape architecture. So if you present us with a portfolio that looks like it was probably also presented for an architecture application, we can tell. If you are presenting us information that is really trying to communicate your interests in landscape or what is drawing you to this profession, even if you are not able to fully demonstrate work that talks to that yet, we can read through that and understand your potential and your fascination with and passion for the field. And that is a very critical component in this, is how are your interests, your passion, your story up to this point actually leading you here?
Thank you. So this question is, how integrated is the MLA and with the MARC program?
It really depends on your level of interest, because it can be very integrated, it can be less integrated, depending on what you are wanting to do. So we currently have two studio courses where you can be incredibly uh, co-disciplinarily working in terms of the way that the architects and the landscape students are working together in the third semester integrated urbanism studio, as well as then in the option research studios, where you have the opportunity to choose to work with an architecture professor. Certainly, you can choose to take architecture courses as your electives, and you are working in a common studio space. So all of the graduate programs have their own dedicated studio space within our third floor facility. If you ever have the opportunity to come to our building, please do. Please let me know. We will arrange a tour, and I would love to introduce myself in person. But you are working alongside architects and urban design students for the entirety of your 3 years in the program. So it really is a scenario where you can have a lot of overlap if you so choose, or you can just have the minimal overlap that is introduced in the curriculum. But it is certainly something that we do, again, kind of pride ourselves on the fact that you have continual exposure to architecture, urban design, visual studies, and forestry. And again, the inclusion of forestry is unique. I don't know of any other landscape program anywhere that actually has forestry under the same roof. So this is something that we really celebrate and are very, very excited about. Um, I feel like there was something else I was going to say there, but maybe it'll come back to me. Go ahead.
So if somebody does have a bachelor's degree in landscape architecture, as well as 1 year of professional experience, what additional information do they need to provide during the application process to be eligible for the advanced placement program?
So it really has to do with coursework. So we would need to understand um, how the coursework somebody has taken is applicable to our coursework and the Canadian context. So I would say if somebody has a Bachelor of Landscape Architecture in Canada, that is a very different situation than having a Bachelor of Landscape Architecture from another country, because we have to understand how the curriculum that you've already taken, the syllabus, the course outlines, the kind of content is something that would be recognized in Canada as part of this accredited degree. So if that degree is from another country, um, it is often very difficult for us to be able to um, put that forward as something that would count towards a year less in your accredited degree. So we look very carefully at the course content, and that would be information that you would need to give us. Also, things that come through in the writing samples, that becomes a very important way of kind of communicating that content as well, because writing samples are also required.
So for somebody who is a student who is balancing full or part-time professional work, how might they be able to integrate their practice into the MLA's program structure as well as studio requirements?
We do not have a part-time program. So if you are accepted into our program and want to complete it in 3 years, it is a full-time endeavor. That being said, students certainly do work, but it has to be in a relatively limited capacity in order to actually be able to address all of the requirements of the program. One of the big challenges that we have is that all of our curriculum has been designed in a very consecutive strategy. So you have to be able to complete one course to be able to move on to the course in the next term and move on into the course to the next term. So when we have had students who, for a variety of reasons, have had to take time off, it may be a situation where they end up having to skip a semester and add more time to their overall degree in order to fit back into that consecutive coursework scenario. So I would say for the most part, um, it is not going to work trying to do a full-time job. It might work with a part-time scenario if you are able to have flexibility from your employer. And if you are trying to be in coursework part-time, that is not really something that we're able to offer.
Okay. So this question is about how many spaces there are available in the program each year.
So we accept usually, more than we end up having attend because, you've got a wealth of choices out there. We like to think that we're the best choice, but you may think so you may think otherwise in the end, but certainly we will do everything we can to bring you here. As I mentioned, we have a variability in terms of the numbers that we have. Right now, we happen to have 21 students in our MLA 3 cohort. We have 31 students actually in our MLA 2 cohort. And then we've got a smaller number in our MLA. I just flipped those around, but a smaller number in our entering class because of the fact that there were some challenges with visas this year. So we did end up with a couple of deferrals. Now, as a general rule, we don't offer deferrals, but these were situations where the visa arrived a week late. So I do greatly encourage anyone who is coming from international locations, as soon as you get your acceptance letter, you should be applying for your visa because while we do everything we can to help students get here, at the end of the day, we are not in charge of those timelines. And we encourage you to pursue that process on your own very quickly. There's not a whole lot we can do to help you other than to, make sure you have the paperwork that allows you to apply. So that diverged from that original question, but hopefully it answered it as well.
Okay. How early do students begin shaping their thesis project?
So I would say that one of the biggest difference between graduate school and undergraduate school is that in many ways, every course you're taking as a graduate student has its own idea about a thesis. You are working to bring your interests to bear on every project you're doing, whether it's a term paper, an essay, a drawing, a thesis, a studio project, a model that you maybe are working on, you are bringing your own ideas to bear on that project. And that, in that way, you are developing an idea about your interests that starts to build over the course of all 3 years. We are not going to ask you what your thesis topic is until the summer before your third year. We're not going to make you commit. But what I will ask you at that point is, what are the issues that you have continually returned to in all of your time in this program? How are there interests or topics that have continually reemerged? because that is where your thesis should be going as an extension of work that you've done for the 3 years, as well as an extension of what brought you to the program to begin with. So in many ways, you're already thinking about those topics in terms of what is leading you to this path in terms of landscape architecture. So while formally we won't be asking you until quite close to the your final year, these are things that you will be thinking about throughout and are always welcome to talk to faculty about.
Can you speak to any opportunities for public engagement while someone is studying in this program?
So it's a little tricky there because I have to interpret what you mean by public engagement. But I will tell you that in terms of access to our community partners, working with firms and listening to design experts in the community come to talk to classes or working with community groups. These are things that are built into every studio project you will ever have, as well as other coursework. So every one of our courses works very hard to make sure we're not operating in a bubble. We want to be reaching out to the community to get input from them, whether it's the professional design community or a neighborhood group or um, a um, a First Nations group. We are trying to work and make extensions out from our various coursework to ensure we are engaging relevant stakeholders and participants in those conversations. So in that sense, you will be engaging with outside groups throughout your 3 years. Now, there will be other opportunities that maybe happen through the public programming group or maybe happen through research efforts that you might be involved in through work study or working with different faculty, where you would have other opportunities to participate more in something outside of Daniels, and those are certainly opportunities that come forward as well.
Thank you. What might be the expected timeline for offers of admission to be sent out?
So, as I mentioned, we do try to get them out quickly because one, we know that there are deadlines that exist for other programs. We know that people need to start working on things like visa applications quite quickly. So I don't want to promise anything, and I'm not completely sure, Gwen, if you have a more definitive answer for this, but I want to say we are sending them out in March,
Yeah,
as that kind of time frame.
that sounds about right. It can depend every year. It depends on,
Exactly.
yeah, but I think that's a good kind of expected deadline. Are there any opportunities to get teaching assistant positions or something like work study while
Yeah,
studying in this program?
absolutely. We are, so one of the things I didn't really talk about, and some of you who maybe are part of the Daniels undergraduate program here might know about this already. But one of the things that, in addition to the graduate programs I mentioned, we have one of the largest undergraduate architectural studies program in North America. So we have a wealth of courses, and there is a reason it's called architectural studies. It is not a professional degree in architecture. It is a degree that is introducing students to architecture, landscape architecture, urban design issues, sustainability, forestry, a full wealth of knowledge that students who think they might be interested in architecture now are exposed to a full realm of options before them. So there are quite a number of landscape classes in our undergraduate program, and our graduate students are the perfect TAs for those courses. There are also opportunities as you move through the program to TA for courses that you took the year prior. So there is an entire TA process, application process that students go through, and they're able to be hired as TAs throughout their time in the program. Additionally, in terms of work study, there are work study positions, there are research assistant positions. These are some things that are administered through the university. So those, I can't really speak to them as much as to say there are definitely possibilities of working in that context, but that's administered through the university and not necessarily through Daniels alone. So that would be something certainly that could be explored as well.
So we do have about 5 minutes remaining, and so just encouraging our guests, if you do have any final questions that you wanted answered, please do go ahead and submit them. We did have a question that was submitted in advance that was related to getting credit for former learning, but not necessarily in an academic sense. And so
Hmm.
in this particular situation, this person has a lot of experience in horticulture.
Hmm.
Is it possible to get credit for former learning that's not necessarily in an academic context?
Yep. I would say in that scenario, I will define credit for you in terms of how we can think about it. So, again, we are very much focused on ensuring that the degree you graduate with has all of the various accreditation requirements. We do not want you to be in a situation where you graduate with our degree and then one of the administering bodies, be it one of the states or one of the provinces, looks at that degree and says, "You never had this course. This doesn't qualify." We don't want that to happen. We are protecting you in that sense. But it may mean that you could potentially be exempt from a particular course. So it wouldn't necessarily change your overall time in our program. It might mean you could take an extra elective because you don't necessarily have to take a course that is repetitive to information you already know. So that's one of those scenarios where we could look at it in a case by case basis. And certainly you would have opportunities to potentially take more electives in that scenario, but it wouldn't necessarily limit your time because we have to look at it from that accreditation and degree standpoint.
Thank you. So you did mention in your presentation a bit about the employability of
Mhm.
graduates. And so wondering if you can talk a little bit about the future kind of prospects
Yep.
for graduates from this program as to what that might look like.
So I'll first just speak to the employability of landscape architects. The Canadian Society of Landscape Architects has been doing a lot of work over the last few years to really look at the status of our profession. And it is a profession that is growing, and it is one where they're even talking about opening more professional landscape architecture programs to meet the demand of landscape architects. So there are a lot of different options, and this is where really it depends on what you want to do. We have students who graduate and go work in Berlin for several years. We have students who graduate and go down to work in the States. And again, we are the top list of some firms like Michael Van Valkenburg and Reed Hildebrandt and some Hargraves and some of these offices where they are so anxious to know who can they hire from the University of Toronto. So it is a program that has a very good reputation throughout the world. And the question really will come down to what do you want to do? Do you want to work in a big name firm? Do you want to work in a small scale firm? Do you want to work in an interdisciplinary firm? Do you want to work for a municipality? Do you want to work for a regional conservation authority? Our students go into all of these fields and more. There are so many different opportunities that you have in terms of, do you end up going and working for a think tank where you're able to visualize complex research information? Do you go into more of a research role? Do you start to go into something that's more academically based? There are many, many different opportunities. And again, we have firms from all over that contact us saying, these are opportunities we have, send your students our way. So we're very, very proud of our employability. And we really do believe that we are not only equipping you technically to address the challenges of the field of landscape architecture, but we're also making sure you have the critical thinking skills to be able to push the profession in the directions it needs to go in the future.
Thank you so much, Elise. So we are at the end of our time together. And so I just wanted to quickly remind everybody, if you had any questions related to admission, specifically your situation, the email is graduate@daniels.utoronto.ca. And if you have questions about the program, Elise has welcomed you to contact her directly at elise.shelley@daniels.utoronto.ca. And so we look forward to your questions and we look forward to hopefully seeing you at some point in the future at Daniels. And so thank you to everybody. Thank you to Elise for presentation and all of your expertise. So wishing everybody a wonderful day.